Greg, Rob, you both teach Scrum, right?
No.
I know. Oh, I'm in the wrong business. No, I do as well. And we talk a lot about product in Scrum, product backlog, product owner. Scrum teams are typically building products. And there's been a lot of talk lately. I think it's a pretty hot topic right now about how do you define a product? What is a product? I mean, it's one of those big picture, fuzzy questions it's kind of hard to answer. And I'm curious, how do you talk about products with your students or with your clients? How do you talk about product definition, like figuring out what actually is our product? Any thoughts to share?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. Let me start with what happens when you don't define your product correctly. For
Mm,
example, we work with a lot of technology software teams. So I'll use an example in software and I'll try to make it universal for everybody here. When you interact with a piece of software, there's some sort of piece that has buttons and you're talking to it and you're interacting with the software as a person. We call that the user interface. Obviously, we interface as a user. Underneath that, there's a bunch of logic that happens. So when you push a button, things happen under the covers, decisions are made by the system, and sometimes information gets stored. So there'll be a database layer or some sort of persistence of information. So like when your credit card information is saved for a future purchase, that's where it's saved. Now, if this software application is like an order management system, like I don't know, you go to Amazon and you order something and you say, "Give me this product, send it to me. Here's my payment information. Go." That software is acting as the way for you to order a product and get it sent to you. Now, if the teams that are building that software aren't really focused on you as the customer, but they're more focused on the individual pieces of the technology. So I've got a
mm,
Scrum team that's considering the database a product, and so their product owner is a database product owner, or the business logic. They got their own Scrum team and their own product owner, and then the actual front end where all the buttons are, that's its own product and its own product owner. When you think about it, now you've got three product backlogs, three standards of quality, definition of done, three people making decisions about priority, and guess what? They're never going to align. The
yeah.
worst case I've ever seen of this was a supercomputer company I worked for that had 39 product owners working on the same product, which was a supercomputer. And they each thought of their own area as a separate product. As you can imagine, not good. So, I mean, these are some of the problems we see is when you're not really looking at the customer and who's paying your bills and where the value's coming in when you make decisions about what a product is for your Scrum team, you can end up creating lots of different Scrum teams oriented very, very differently with no sense of how they're all going to come together at the end. And it becomes kind of a project management nightmare. And I oftentimes see project managers then get assigned to coordinate all this, which
Sure.
then starts to break the fabric of Scrum. So I just wanted to kind of kick off the discussion with some of the problems I've seen when we get product definition incorrect.
Yeah, more focus on what each team is doing at a component or a feature layer rather than what's the overall product here. Interesting. What about
Exactly.
you? What about you, Greg?
Using the model that has worked for, say, like teams like the Navy SEALs or other elite, say, military groups, and I'm not going to pair everything military here. What they have been able to deliver by way of a service for their country or for their missions is outcomes. They're able to actually like get the
Mm,
job done, but they are not told how to do it. That is where the product idea comes from. So, from a business standpoint, when you are thinking about your objective, you aren't setting out, hey, here's the 16 things that need to happen. I need to go find a team or teams to go do that. That would be old school kind of project thinking, which I'm not saying projects are terrible. I'm just saying that if you are trying to go product and you call that your product, it's not. You're going to have people just churning on work that somebody's predetermined to be valuable, predetermined to be viable, predetermined to, they basically predicted the future.
sure.
So in the modern day, modern reality, we can't predict the future. So going back to the military example, when you have those elite teams, they also can't predict the future. That's why you have to empower them with a set of boundaries, with a set of goals, rules, objectives, things that they can within themselves determine how best to do that, given the nature of their very cross-functional team. So all the language that we use in our training and classes really pair nicely with what feels obvious when you say, well, how would you do that in the most common sense way? That we're looking at it. So it's almost like industry, business need to return back to some common sense here that says if we are trying to solve this problem for this group of people, is that a viable thing for our business to do? And if the answer, and it takes time to come to that conclusion and answer, it's not something you just make up overnight, say, sure, I think we can. I feel like it should. Things like I think it should, I feel don't work in the product thinking. Use as much data that you can gather as possible to indicate viability from a business standpoint. Then look at the problem that you're hoping to solve in relationship to the customer. That's where value begins to emerge. And then we can talk about team implementation from there on out. But if you're defining a product, if you're trying to come up with a product concept, if you don't work from a problem statement first, that is a viable reality for your business or context, I think you're going to be wasting a whole lot of time or just entering into a classic project kind of thinking, which doesn't have guaranteed outcomes. Actually, nothing has guaranteed outcomes, but you increase your risk substantially.
Yeah, framing work to do as problems to solve rather than tasks to be done, I think is a great way to start. And I think there's lots of tools that can help with this. Some of them we talk about in our product owner training, right? Business model canvas, lean canvas, value proposition canvas. I'm a big fan of the lean UX canvas, and if you're out there wondering, do they all have to be a canvas? No, they don't. They just those happen to be popular, but it's popular for a reason. It's because these canvases usually are ways to sort of zoom out and away from just, well, this is the task that we do. I build a UI, I build a database, I build this feature, right? And look more broadly at what are the problems we're trying to solve. Who are our customers? What segments do they break into? What problems do they have? How can we help them achieve the outcomes they're looking for? And oh, by the way, can we do that in a way that also helps us as the business, the producers of this product, also achieve the outcomes that we're looking for, right? And when those match up well, then you have, potentially a good product market fit. So I think, pulling together all these ideas that we're talking about, we want to start from a customer centric point of view. What is the market looking for? What are people trying to do? I mean, the old adage that necessity is the mother of invention, right? It's like it wasn't, hey, I can do a thing. That's the invention. That's the mother of invention. It's someone needs a problem solved. Oh, I have a thing. I have an idea. I'm starting to think of like those classic like infomercials where people have like come up with these crazy inventions because there's got to be a better way, right? Like, what is the problem that your
Slap chop.
customers? Yeah, exactly. Slap chop or magic chamois or the Ronco rotisserie. Okay, please don't sue us, any of those companies. But the idea here is like, what problems are your customers trying to solve, and how can we craft something called a product around those outcomes, and then how we achieve those outcomes, kind of to use your military analogy, Greg. It's not like go do this thing, here are your marching orders. It's our outcome is to take the hill, and we have to figure out how to do that, right? Our outcome is that our customers are trying to solve this problem, they're trying to do this work, and we have a better way to help them achieve it. That's not starting with the task that we're doing as producers. That's starting with the outcome we're trying to achieve and working backwards into the task, because there might be more than one way to achieve it, and then we can experiment, try different ways, and figure out. And so I think some of those canvases are a great place to start. My personal favorite is probably the Lean UX canvas, but any of those can really help you start from an outcomes point of view instead of looking at just the outputs that you're trying to achieve and helping you define a product.